Trap Talk Reptile Network, the coolest reptile network in the world. Welcome to Dallas NARBC. We have such a special episode lined up for you guys. We have Flood Reptiles in the building, but we have the queen of Flood Reptiles in the building. Cheyanne, what is going on?
Not much. How are you?
Good. I'm so happy to finally meet you and your pops.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys are here bending at Dallas, the only table that has Boelens available.
Yes.
I mean, how's it feel to have like that kind of rarity, but then I guess one of the coolest tables at a show?
It's very awesome, and we're grateful to be here and be able to travel cross country to even be able to do this.
Yeah, you guys are kind of a mystery, man, because like I said, we were just talking about how I've seen you post some of the Boelen clutches and whatnot from your personal Facebook page.
Yes.
Right. So are you going to be more the active side of the Flood Reptiles as far as posting stuff on social media?
Yep. I do all posting. I do all advertisements, all of our banner work, T-shirts. I work with all the visual side of it.
Right.
But
and so how's it been? I mean, you were kind of born into this from what I heard.
yeah, my dad's been doing reptiles since he was probably 10, and he got out of it for a little bit and then got back into it right before I was born. So I was just born and raised into it and been going to shows since I was a toddler. So
now, I mean, how's it feel to be like working with such an amazing project, but you guys are like behind the scenes in a sense? I don't want to break down too many details on why you guys are kind of laying low, but yeah. I mean, how do you feel? Like, I mean, because you guys have so much great stuff working with. Not a lot of people are successful with what you're working with.
Yeah.
But do you feel like we're almost at that time where you guys want to start putting more stuff out and letting people know what's happening? Or
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, we've just always been low key in the reptile world and outside of it, but definitely come up and talk to us. We'll tell you anything you want to know, how to do it, where to do it, like what you need.
Right. And I don't want to make it seem like you're just here for social media, because you are a legit reptile keeper. Like, yes. You love this.
Yep.
Right. And so obviously Boelens is like the meat potatoes of this episode, but what are some of the stuff you are passionately working with? Maybe some stuff that you in the future you're excited to be, revealing to the hobby. Let's kind of talk about some of your passion projects.
Oh yeah, for sure. Obviously love working with the Boelens, and then I do Cheyanne geckos as well, and then some emeralds, diamonds,
nice,
and
dude.
Like the fancier, more not seen on every table,
right?
Stuff, but
you as far as where you guys have your collection, it's in a basement, right?
Yes.
Now, do you feel like that's been a huge key to your success because of because I've talking to your dad and you yesterday about how you guys have hot summers. It could get in the hundreds, but where you guys keep your animals at, it doesn't get that hot, and it's all ambient.
Yep. Yeah, so definitely think that's a huge part of it. I've been to some people's reptile rooms where you walk in and it's like a sauna, like you're instantly sweating, and I feel like that's a little harder on trying to keep a certain temperature with inside cages and everything else, and I think it makes it a lot easier to have a room that stays consistently in the 70s and not having to fight 80 other things that can complicate breeding season, at least.
Yeah, because I mean, based off what I'm hearing, a lot of the species you work with do well in a climate like that. Like, obviously there's reptiles that do better in a hotter ambient, Australian snakes or whatever, Aussie lizards, but emerald tree boas, diamond pythons, Boelens, those do great in like 70, low 70 ambience. You know what I mean?
And we don't use heat tape at all. It's all just lamps and just a plain light going across the backs.
So let me ask you this. When did you really kind of like get your first experience of breeding? Like what age do you feel like you were actually connecting the dots and like knowing like, holy crap, like we could make more of these things? Like how old were you?
Oh gosh. Probably around 12, if not younger.
Wow.
I mean, I had my first corn snake at 5, so
wow.
It was just had corn snakes, probably about 5 of them, and bred those, got a clutch out, and been doing it ever since, and slowly just transitioned into leechies. And now I got 20 of those.
Yeah, and you also have some awesome lychees displayed at your table. And I'm just kind of getting my feet wet with like the geckos and the lychee side of things, but that's also like a huge like underwork project. You know what I mean? Because you have your ball pythons, you have your hog noses, but man, there are so many awesome gecko species. The Leachianus, like those are freaking neat to work with, and they're not that hard to keep.
No, they're super easy. Diet's super easy. You're not messing with bugs or any of that. Just we use Pangea insect powder mix, and
that's it. Set it and forget it.
Yep. And again, no heat tape, just a lamp, and call it a day.
So I definitely love I love that this hobby has awesome female keepers. I don't think there's enough. We definitely need more female keepers.
Yes.
But what was it like for you growing up, loving reptiles as a girl? I'm sure not all your other friends were maybe on that same level, but you were that one girl with the pops with awesome reptiles. But how did you like mingle with that as a kid? And like, did you ever feel like you're a weird one for being such a reptile lover when a lot of people were, especially back in the day, they didn't understand them as well as they do now? But what was it like being a young girl reptile keeper, your whole life and hanging out with kids that weren't really hanging out with reptiles?
Yeah, no, I'm from a very small town. I graduated with 18 people, and they were very much like, oh my God, that's awesome. Like, can we come over and see snakes and all that? So it kind of gave you cool points, but it's nice. And where we're from, reptile shows are much smaller than this. And so it's still a community, and everybody's willing to help each other. It's just like here, you can go up to a table and ask a million questions, and someone's going to answer you.
Yeah.
But
now vending is definitely like a lifestyle. And, I've had my good share of vending throughout the last couple of years, but it's definitely tiring because you're there interacting, talking to people all day. How do you like the vending scene? Like, what's your take on vending, tapping into the community? Let's kind of hear how your thoughts are about vending.
Oh yeah, I love it. I do hair and I bartend as well, so this is easy for me. It's easy to talk to people. It's easy to educate people on what to do, and because I already do it full time for my day job, anyways.
Right. That's true. I mean, being a bartender, you got to be good at talking small talk.
Oh,
and, keeping people happy and whatnot. Because that's
it's easy to converse. Easy to carry on a conversation and keep it going.
Yeah. So let's kind of talk about your dad's earlier days. Obviously you remember your dad keeping reptiles for as long as you were on Earth. But where do you feel like things are now? Like, because your dad's been passionately about this his whole life, your whole life. But do you guys feel like you feel good about the snake market? Because you got some people who work with unfortunately saturated projects.
Yep.
Boelens is not saturated whatsoever.
No.
So what's your guys' feeling going into a market where some aren't doing too great, but then when you have something like what you're working with, it's really unknown?
Yeah. It's definitely interesting for sure. It's nice to not be in something so saturated. It does kind of suck. Like you said in yesterday's or 2 days ago, you said it's all ball pythons. Like it does suck seeing so many, and it's cool to see how many different colors you can see in one snake. But
but when you got a million people doing it,
it is a little overwhelming, and I'd like to see more variety at some point, and maybe we'll get there again someday.
Right. You guys breed your own rodents?
We used to, and then, Dad told you he sold all of his boa constrictors, and we had our own rodents at that time. So when we got rid of the boas, we got rid of the rodents and got a bunch of Boelens.
Yeah, and so you guys are hanging okay with as far as your rodent plug or whoever's giving you rats and stuff like that?
Yep. So who we actually sold our rodent collection to is who we get our rodents from.
Oh, wow.
So
there you go.
They're ours anyways.
So it's like you actually took a load off your plate,
yep.
and you still have your rats whenever you need them.
Yep.
Now, listen, there's a lot of back and forth as far as preferred method as far as a prey item for a snake. You got some people who primarily like to do, and mind you, Boelens, you got to do rats. You can't do mice, right?
Yep.
But have you ever thought the difference between a rat and a mice as far as nutrition content?
Yeah. I mean, you just got to think about it like human food.
Right.
You're going to eat a chicken breast where it has a lot of more lean protein.
Right.
Whereas a chicken thigh, it's going to be more of that dark meat and more nutritious in the long run.
Right.
So you just really got to think of what's going to be more beneficial for any reptile, whether it's Boelens, gecko, or anything.
Right.
But we personally just don't work with birds for feeding because of how messy it is when it comes out the other end. But
right. You know, and like I said, you know, it's really hard to like give what a Boelens needs out of a mouse, right? But what do you think about like quail and like, you know, like a type of bird diet program for a snake like a Boelens? Do you think that could be beneficial? Because here's the thing, we're talking about humans, right? If a human eats nothing but McDonald's every day, that's not good for you, right?
No.
And rats have a lot of fat, you know.
Yep.
It's a fat, hearty meal. But you know, you look at a quail, right, which is a lot more leaner, and they're not just getting one source of diet in the wild; they're getting a bunch of different stuff. Do you think you and your dad will ever be interested in like maybe implementing quail or something like that? Or have you guys ever talked about bird diets and rodent diets, just kind of like switching it up a little bit?
I'm sure at some point we'll look into it. Like I said, we're just kind of avoiding the mess right now.
Yeah.
We have scented with quail for the babies that we have hatched out.
Which works. Yeah.
Yes, it does work because we've also tried chicken stock and it doesn't work as well. So quail does work for scenting just to get them to eat that first time.
Yeah. And, you know, it's so important because, you know, I'm sure just like other like not too established projects out there, like you have babies that are going to be harder to establish, right? And you understand like what are the odds of a baby Boelens eating a rat or a rat pup in the wild? Like they're, you know, I know there are rodent prey out there.
Oh yeah.
But like, you know, you got to think they're going to get what they can get sometimes, and it's not always just one item. It's not the same prey item, you know. But then you also think, you know, one thing about your dad that he told me is like you guys keep your Boelens pretty lean. They're not fat.
No,
like they're pretty lean. Sorry, they're pretty lean and whatnot. But you know, you got to think like, how could it hurt to like give it a diverse diet?
Yeah, I'm sure it would be very beneficial. We're so keep it simple. Like we don't want to overcomplicate things, from feeding to housing to breeding, all that.
Yeah, and that's a good point, you know, because one of the biggest things that keepers do, not intentionally, but because they're so passionate about, they overthink. You know, and overthinking can lead to a lot of like, you know, backstepping. You know what I mean? You're walking backwards versus forward.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, so we try to, I mean, don't get me wrong, we'll try it 1 year, and if it doesn't work, we'll tweak it, add something else, try something completely different. We go all over the place with everything, but we also try to keep it very simple and not overly complicated, because we don't want to overly complicate it, be successful, and then be like, all right, this is what you got to do. And now not only are you buying a 10,000 plus snake, and now you have to drop even more money just to even try to be successful.
I mean, it could literally get very like heavy on the pockets if you're not careful, especially with Boelens, right? I mean, because we're talking about, you know, something where it's going to take a lot more than just a pair to get the job done, which that's kind of one of the big secrets, I guess you could say. Which I'll talk to your dad about that. But like, you know, sometimes doing the simple route is like the key to success, you know, and not just overthinking. But I think that comes with experience. You know, I think the longer you are at something, the more you kind of like stop over stressing it and you just let it be. You know, so as long as you can remember, how long has your dad been trying to breed Boelens for? Because from what I understand, this is his 4th year in a row. We're going on 5 years. Fifth year. So 2019 was his first clutch, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I think he had them for a year before that.
Okay.
I got them from a buddy. So yeah, it hasn't been that long that he's owned them and has been breeding them.
And, you know, obviously, like, everyone has their favorites, right? How do you look at the Boelens? Are those one of your top tier in your book? And, and also, like, how do you feel like the demeanors are? Like, you know, like, do you feel like they're a very easy workable snake as far as, like, temperament goes? Or, like, what's been your experience as far as the temperament side of the Boelens?
They're definitely by far one of my favorites that we do work with. And we don't handle our animals that much. Like
Right.
we don't
If
just walk
needed.
around
Yeah.
with them around the house. We'll handle them.
You don't cuddle with them?
No. Nope. We handle them when we need to, and obviously we'll take them out to take photos. But definitely the females are more on the aggressive side. Like you could probably feed them all the time, and they would still be like, "Where's my food?"
And which is kind of like, that's a whole good side of keeping them lean. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're not lazy snakes that are just sitting there because they're full. They want to eat, and they're trying to move, and they're trying to get going.
Yep. And we've sat down there and watched them just all day long. They sit there and move back and forth. We have ledges in the cages, and they'll just like flop off them all the time.
Right.
They're constantly moving.
Yeah.
It's not very often that you see them just chill and hang out.
Right.
So.
Now, other than the bull and I, like, what's maybe another species you're pretty passionate about? Like maybe something you guys haven't successfully bred yet, but maybe you're on your way, you see it happening, but you're just very stoked about it.
Yeah, I definitely love working with the emeralds, and we got some high yellows and low patterns, and
nice.
I feel like you also don't see those very often either.
Not an easy snake to work with sometimes.
No, and we haven't been super successful with them, but we're working on it, and hopefully we'll get that locked down. But
right now, how do you feel about like green tree pythons? Any other arboreal snakes that you really like? Oh wait, hold on. What do you think about Bill Stiegel's green tree pythons? Because you got to go to the mayor's house.
Yes.
You and your pups got to go to the collection and check out some of the country's best chondros that are out there. But what were your thoughts about Bill Stiegel's chondros?
He's got an amazing collection. I would definitely check that out. It's kind of crazy. You tend to don't realize like how colorful they can get, and
so it's in front of your face.
Yeah. And that's awesome to see. And I would love to work with that someday as well. Just haven't really seen a whole lot around here today.
Yeah,
either.
I will say, what's his name? Hold on. Oh, shout out to Bomb Sport Boa, my buddy Sony, who's probably the only guy at this show with designer chondros at his table. Did you go see it?
Yes.
Dude, how crazy
Not
is
for
that?
sale, though.
Of course. I mean,
of course.
Listen, everything has a price.
Yep.
You just got to inquire, and it's going to be thousands.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure the cheapest neonate on his table is probably going to be about $12,000.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But, we're talking about something that is colorful, like a morph ball python, but different, right? Like,
yes.
Like how designer do those things look?
They're amazing, and the coloration is what I love the most. I work with art a lot, as you saw at the table.
Right.
So seeing something that colorful and vibrant, but different and unique, and obviously each snake that you get is going to look completely different from the next one.
A lot of people, like, this hobby's growing. Like I don't need to actually explain how this is growing. You could see how big this hobby's been growing throughout the years. But what's your advice for anyone out there who maybe got into the game with one species? Like, okay, let me paint a better picture. A lot of ball python people are first-time beginner snake keepers, right? But then there's also something else that they get interested in. What's your advice for anyone out there who just got into a reptile game, but they want to work with more than one species?
Honestly, just do it. If you can, buy the pair right away, and if not, grab one and grab another. And I mean, that's what I did with lychees. I started with, I lucked out and had a buddy that was selling a pair and got a pair, and eventually every show I've been to, I probably grab one more.
And that's how you do it.
Yep. Same with snakes. Did that every time I go to a show, grab something else, try to work with different lines and whatnot. So,
well, there's levels to this, right? Like if you especially want to come into this and work with emeralds, chondros, or even Boelens, you have two different routes you could go. You could go United States captain born and bred, which I prefer.
Agreed.
Right? But let's be real. That's a huge jump in price, right?
Yep.
So there's the import route.
Yep.
Okay. And nothing against the imports. This whole hobby was started off imports.
Yep.
But what's your take on someone who wants to get into something like bull and eye, emeralds, and they're like, oh man, I don't know if I want to spend the captive born and bred price. I'd rather go import. What would you say to that?
I mean, do what you need to do. Definitely be careful. quarantine your animals away from your others in case they're bringing in something. But yeah, keep it clean.
Yeah, I mean, quarantine's everything, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you kind of make your life easy, is
Yep.
separate anything that's new coming in and give it its time. So yeah, I totally agree. A wrap-up question for you here, okay? I'm curious what your plans are, or what the goals are for Flood Reptiles in the next 5 to even 6, 7 years. Like, what's the game plan overall for you and your pops?
Personally, I would love to do it full time. Obviously, getting Boelens up to where you need to be full time is
Like, meaning like no bar job, no nothing, just snakes. You're down for that?
hell yeah. I would I would love to.
Yes, that's a
I would
dream.
love to get to that point someday. Like, I talk about it all the time. I would love to get out of the bar scene. I would love to get out of all that.
A lot of late nights.
It's a lot of late nights, long days. I mean, I've been working the last 3 weeks 12, 15 hours a day just to even prepare to come to the show.
Wow.
So it'd be nice to get on the level of like Bob Clark. He does it
Bob Clark's a G, legend.
all day, every day, travels all over.
Goes to Germany like it's nothing.
Yeah, like that'd be nice. I don't know if I would ever go out of the U.S., but
You definitely. I mean, if it's
I would go to
cracking like
shows,
that,
but
yeah. But you never know. Like, I mean, Bob Clark travels because he has mad business in Germany and stuff like that. Because what he's done with the Reptiles.
Yep.
You and your dad are almost in that. You guys are in that position with the Boelens.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You guys got something that not a lot of people understand how it's happening. So
Yep.
I think that's the awesome thing about this episode. And I've been looking forward to speaking to you and your dad. We're about to speak to Scott, Cheyanne's dad, here in a minute. But before we let you go, Cheyanne, what's the best place for people to follow everything? Because not everyone's a Facebook person, okay?
Yeah.
And I actually found you on Facebook. I don't even know if you have an Instagram.
Yep.
I don't know if you're active on IG. So why don't you say where people can follow you and check all your guys' stuff out?
Yeah, definitely find us on Facebook, Instagram. It's under Flood Reptiles. I'm probably the most active, and you can also follow my personal Instagram, and I'll respond back.
What's your personal IG?
Cheyanne Lyric. That's it.
Cheyanne Lyric?
Yep. So
All right.
it's all reptiles on that as well. Maybe a couple hair pictures.
Yeah.
But
all right.
yeah.
I'll put all the links in the description below. So, guys, go give her a follow, please. She's going to be a force to be reckoned with here in the future. So thank you so much, Cheyanne, for sitting down and letting the trappers hear what you had to say.
Thank you for having me.
You're awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just like that.
Just like that. Say something again.
Just like that.
Perfect. All right, guys. Here we are, the man of the hour, Scott Flood of Flood Reptiles. We did it.
How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm so happy to be sitting in front of you right now.
Yeah, me too.
I'll never forget how excited I was to get a phone call from you. I don't know if it was a phone call or it was a text message, but you reached out to me, and I've heard your name, man, throughout the, your name's vibing. It's been vibing out through the hobby for at least a year or so, mainly because of the amazing work that you've done with the bull and I. But I got to say, it's an honor to be sitting in front of you, Scott.
Thanks.
You have an awesome daughter. Cheyanne's a badass. How's it feel to be, a part of something like that,
It's a lot of times it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
So you'll figure it out. So
Is Cheyanne your only child?
yes. Yep.
And she was born into this, the reptile game.
Yep.
Yeah. And what do you have to overall think as far as like where you're at with reptiles? You've been doing it all your life, from what I heard.
Yep.
Right. And so here we are. How old are you now, Scott?
57.
57 years old, man. So 40 plus years in the game.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you feel about where you're at right now?
Oh, I feel pretty good.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want more animals than what I'm working with. Just too much of a hassle selling them. I don't like being around the crowds.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's kind of a rookie move to like overflow your plate with a bunch of snakes and animals. But then at the end of the day, you got to have to dial down and you have to stay focused, right?
got to work with what you love.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
yeah, you can't follow trends. You know what I mean?
I try to get into the boa constrictor selling thing, because I wanted to buy Boelens. And I figured if I bred enough boas, I can buy Boelens. Then I realized I could sell all my Boelens or boas and buy Boelens.
Right.
So
is that kind of what happened?
That's what I did. So
wow. And what year was this?
Between 2016, 18, I started selling my collection off.
So less than 10 years ago.
Yep, I've been keeping Boelens heavily for 9 years. So
okay. And how were you starting off your groups? Like, were you getting young Boelens? Were you getting like mature adults? Like, how are you adding these into your collection?
My first 4 were given to me on a breeding loan. Okay. From a good buddy of mine, Kevin Munchnick. He's no longer with us. He passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
But he sent them up to me on a breeding loan, and I just always loved these things. I saw them first time in the late 80s at the Oklahoma City Zoo and wanted them ever since. And he knew how much I liked them, so he sent them up to me and started working with them. And my wife's like, these are really cool. She's not a snake keeper at all.
Right.
She don't hate
not
reptiles.
her thing.
She likes horses. So
okay, that's cool.
But
so she's an animal lover.
Yep. So we end up she's like, you should get rid of all your other stuff and buy Boelens. I'm like, okay, that's what I'm going to do.
That makes sense.
So I sold all that stuff. Still wasn't enough money. I sold a tractor I had. We got an acreage and sold my tractor and some guns and some other miscellaneous
whatever you
stuff.
had to.
Yep.
Yeah.
And bought 8 Boelens, 4.4. So,
and that's not even including the group that you were sent on a breeder loan, right?
So I had
12 together.
Yep. So I had 12 together. So
and the group that you brought, not the breeder loan ones, but the ones after that, those were how young?
They were babies.
Babies.
Yep.
Okay.
So
now let's talk about your experience raising up Boelens. I'm curious, how quick are they growing? Are they more on the slower side as far as getting to maturity, or what's it been like? Raising up your Boelens?
I personally grow them slow, but you can grow them as fast as you want them, just like any other snake.
Can you give me an idea how you're feeding them, like at a juvenile stage?
As babies, I feed them a little bit more frequent. Like every 7 days or so,
once a week.
And as they mature, I just cut back their feeding. Now I just feed kind of whenever I feel like it.
Yeah.
So
whenever you feel it's necessary.
Yep.
Yeah.
So they maintain their weight really well. So
yeah. What has been the most successful first prey item for your baby Boelens? Like ones that you've hatched?
The ones I hatched, they usually eat rat fuzzies scented with quail.
Scented with quail.
Yep, that seems to be their go-to animal.
So do you scent right off the bat, or do you try to do them without the scenting?
I try to do them without every time.
Right.
I only had 1 out of 18 take it. So
yeah.
And then some will just only eat quail right off the bat, and then I just switch them over to scented rat.
I'm glad you mentioned quail, because me and Cheyanne were talking about the diverse in diets in the hobby now. Back in the day, it's straightforward, right? Rats, rodents, but you have people who have quail available. I have shout out to Blake Exotic Quails. He's one of my sponsors, provides me a lot of awesome quail. But I've been seeing like a lot of, I can't say but I feel like a diverse diet for, especially for, I don't know, like a green tree python or an emerald tree boa. Like, I just want to know what your opinion is as far as having a diverse diet versus a straight just rodent diet. Like, how important do you think that is?
I don't think it's that important. I got snakes that are 30 years old. That's all they've eaten is rodents.
Right.
So I don't think it's that important. But like monitors and other lizards, I do think it's important. I don't like feeding birds because it's a mess when it comes back out.
Yeah.
So I prefer rodents. If they'll eat a rodent, that's what I'm going to feed. As far as the snakes go.
Right. So, now, if it's talking about moving up in prey item sizes, like, well, where do you see like the most change as far as prey sizes go? Like, where do you notice you're going to rat fuzzies to like, wean rats or like bigger rats? Like, at what age do you feel like they're able to bump up?
Right now they're a year old, and I got them on large pups.
Oh, got it.
Not quite wean,
right?
But real close to
fully
wean.
Eyes open, just pups, right?
Yeah, with it, when a pup changes and gets that pointy nose.
Yep.
They're right about that stage.
Right.
So it's a pretty big food item for that. They're not very big snakes.
Yeah, and so even at that point, are you giving them more of a more time in between meals? Like, is it more like 10 days or 14 days?
Yeah, that's what they're on right now, 10 to 14. So, I'm one of them guys. I just don't believe in pushing these snakes.
Right.
I want them to live a long time. So, maybe someday my daughter will take over, and
I'm pretty sure.
So
she's passionate about it.
So she likes animals. So wish she'd do more hands-on, but she don't live with us. So, which is nice. So, yeah.
And one of the things I feel like is not really understood fully is, and for anyone who hasn't like really worked or researched Boelens, a lot of people think everything should be kept like a ball python, but Boelens you don't want to keep too warm. Obviously you provide basking, but can we talk about the ambience that have been working for you, and like what temps you have the cage on the cool side and the hot side, and or any of that stuff?
Yeah, start out with I use bulbs for heat. I use 80-watt power suns.
Okay.
Halogen bulbs.
Right.
That's for their heat. And
how many do you have in there? I'm curious.
I use 2 bulbs. One's a power sun. One's just a floodlight.
Right. Okay.
So, and they actually do prefer the UV, so lights over the non-UV lights.
Right.
So, but so I provide them a hot spot, and then the rest of the cage is just ambient, whatever my room is, which is usually right around 72 degrees.
Right.
And
even
colder
summertime,
in the winter.
Oh, so okay. But even in summertime, it stays at 72.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Can you explain why that is?
I live in the Midwest, and we have a basement, and our basement stays cool. So,
and you have other.
It's the ideal snake.
And that's what I'm hearing. Shout out to Ed Marino. Ed Marino's the king of basins, from what people say, and I believe he is. But he has his animals in a basement. Basins aren't something that is easy to breed, but it seems like he has it down. And I feel like it's because he has them in a basement. I feel like having a basement is a huge benefit to breeding reptiles.
I think so. I've always bred my snakes in the basement, bred lizards in the basement. It works. You got more control over the temperature range. And I don't think a snake or a lizard needs to be hot all the time.
Right. Because they have options to get away from the heat in the wild. They hide a lot, so having something exposed like that, and it can't be good all the time.
I work construction. I sweat all day. I don't need to come home and sweat all day in my snake room. So,
thank you. Let's take things back, though. Obviously, I talked to you yesterday at Bill Stiegel's party, and I hear you were into monitors at one point.
Yep.
How far back was this?
This is early 80s.
Wow.
All the way up into the early 90s.
And you had croc monitors back then?
Croc monitors. I had water monitors, Nile monitors, tree monitors.
Tree
monitors, the green and the blacks.
Nice.
And peach throats. I had probably 15 different species of monitors.
And what happened with the monitors? Like, what made you switch, or made you kind of dial back down?
My wife wanted horses. So.
Oh, wow. Man.
So can't take care of monitors and horses at the same time. They're both daily things.
My Aunt Christine works with horses, and I've seen her in action, and man, you want to talk about back-breaking work, man. Like she's one of the toughest ladies I've ever met, but it's the reward is like, it's
them hay bales aren't like to be thrown around, So, and my wife, we got into the horses. She was showing them and all that stuff. So we did the horses pretty heavily for a lot of years, and we still got them. So,
how many horses you have?
Right now, just one, but we had up to like 7 or 8.
Wow.
So,
and how much property do you live on?
I live on 6 acres.
Dang. So. 6 acres, and you're born and raised from where you're at, right? Like,
Omaha, Nebraska area. So.
Oh, okay, awesome. So. Now, what's your opinion? I wanted to ask you as far as what your opinion is on the reptile market as of today. Obviously, you've been in the game since the 80s, but there's ups and downs. You have some species of reptiles not doing too hot in the market, but since you have something hot that nobody really has, what's your take on the reptile market right now, and how do you feel about having such a great project in your favor?
I'm glad it's changing, because I got out of the reptiles, got out of the scene. I always kept reptiles, but I got out of the scene from the early 90s to early 2000. And I was just shocked at what happened. The ball python thing.
Right.
It's like, why? It's like, why do we got these things all over the place?
Yeah.
It's grateful, it's started a whole new generation of people, but
it brought me in.
I'm used to the days, we all had a diverse collection.
Right.
And
work with you love.
Yep. And, we all had different animals, and a lot of them, we had groups of, boas, groups of different pythons, groups of monitors and other lizards. I kept tortoises. I've had frog. I kept everything back in the day.
Yeah.
So.
Do you ever deal with any crazy like viruses or any kind of like Nido or anything like that back in the day?
Never had to deal with that. So I've been fortunate, haven't dealt dealt with any sick animals since I moved it. We built our house back in, it was 25 years ago. We built our house, and ever since I've had a snake in that house, never had anything go wrong.
But you've heard about it though, right?
Oh yeah,
You've heard about people's collections being wiped out. And as you're hearing this, what's your first thought? Like, what do you think of when you hear about people like, man, all my chondros died from Nido or something?
Oh, that suck. That's why I will not let anyone hold any of my baby Boelens here.
Wow.
Just because I want to be able to take my snake and put it back in my house and not quarantine it for a year.
Yeah, and, no disrespect to the people attending the show, but a lot of people don't understand that, there's such a risk taking out such an animal and putting it in someone's hands where that person could have been at someone else's table touching some animal, right?
Yep. I've had, I don't know how many people ask me to hold them, and I'm like, sorry, I just can't do it,
Obviously, you have people who've been in the game long enough, who've experienced Nido, and they're like, they wear gloves in between snakes and all that. How crazy of a biosecurity do you have in your collection?
I don't.
Because it's how closed off it is, right?
Yeah, it's closed off. If I get a new animal, it sits in a quarantine room for a year or two, and my temperatures in my house is so extreme.
Right.
If they're gonna get something, it's gonna show up.
Quarantine for a year or two. The average quarantine nowadays is like 3 months, and I want to hear what your take is as far as why you think you should quarantine something for about 1 year to 2 years.
My daughter moved out, so I got extra rooms in the house. So she took up 2 rooms when she lived there. So now I got 2 free rooms. So I can put a snake somewhere else for a year or two.
And taking your time does what, you feel like, with the quarantine?
Peace of mind that I don't catch something from whatever's.
It's an insurement that, okay, this thing definitely has nothing wrong. Because things pop up out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a snake could be looking like it's completely fine. And then you think a couple months goes by, well, I could add this in, but really, this thing's probably cooking some bad stuff.
It's not 100%, but, and I don't test for Nido. I mean, if I thought my animals had it, I would, just so I knew what they had. But, I mean, my basement during the winter gets 65 degrees. How many Nido positive animals do you think would survive that?
Not.
Or any other, RI or something like that.
Yeah.
Just not going to work. So
I'm glad you mentioned that. You have people who choose to keep their rooms warmer because if they drop it in temps, they get sick animals. That's not normal.
No, and I understand why people keep their rooms warmer, but to me, it's like, why?
Right.
We offer these animals a hot spot normally.
Right.
I mean, if you don't offer a hot spot, I can totally understand why you got your temperature so warm, but if you offer a hot spot, why have your room hot?
Right.
So.
Right. And mind you, there's many different ways to be successful at one thing. And we were talking about dieting a lot, how you prefer to keep your Boelens lean, but then I always like, well, some people say that you could get them successfully breeding by feeding them like retics. And you said you can if you really want to, right?
I'm sure they will, but I mean,
disadvantages though on that.
Disadvantage of overfeeding your snake, it's going to die sooner. So
because in your experience, they should live how long?
30 plus years.
Right.
So I had Apodor Papillon.
Yeah.
I had them for 30 years.
Yeah. Beautiful snakes, man.
And I got Timor pythons that are 28 plus years old.
So they're big, huh?
They're one's like 9 foot.
Damn.
So
yeah,
I love them snakes, but man, they're
messy.
They suck.
Yeah, and they don't like being held.
So.
And I had a group of 14 Timors, and it was a passionate thing of mine. But and mainly because I thought I could get them to chill out. But holy shit, it's not happening.
You can handle them, move them around.
Yeah, but we're on like 5 minutes and they're over it.
Yeah,
and they start urating all over you.
Yeah, and that's just a nasty smell.
Man.
So.
Luckily, none of mine were nippy, but they were just, they just urate.
Yeah, none of mine bite,
so
they just
piss on you.
Yep, and it sucks. Yeah, I hate them for that, you know. But they're just such an awesome looking snake.
Yeah.
So.
Now, one of the things I stress out for you, is because man, I would love to have Boelens, right? But here you have something that has not really been worked with in the United States as much, but you also have the importation game, right? And you have people bringing in Boelens, and I feel like the prices they jump. It goes from one level to the next. But where do you
3,500 to 12,000?
I mean, what the fuck, stupid, man? That's crazy. But how do you feel? Where is the comfort zone about your United States captive born and bred prices? Like, obviously you don't bring a lot to sell, but at that point, if there's a bunch of availability, like where are you going to feel comfortable pricing them at?
I price mine at $10,000 each. And right now I only have a pair for sale. So, and they're unrelated females. So I don't know about the males, because I use multiple males to breed them. So, but I figured $10,000 for a captive bred Boelens is well worth it. I think, Boelens were coming in, and if they were coming in at $5,000, I think a captive born snake should be double that.
At least,
So
right?
that's what I think.
And we talk about the time, the effort, the patience, everything that you're putting in.
I can't double a $12,000 snake. That's just stupid.
Right.
So,
right.
Let
me ask you this. If somebody respectfully asked you, like, Scott, like, why should I pay you $10,000 versus this $5,500 import on this other table, what would you have to say to that?
There's nothing wrong with that import other than it's an import.
Right.
It drank the water over there. It lived over there. You don't know what it got. Mine's 100% clean because it was born here. Right. And, back to the Nido thing and how everybody's freaked out about it. I changed the way I do things.
Yeah.
If I mess with my baby snakes, I don't touch. I'll touch stuff after I did the babies. But if I do the adults, I never go to the baby. So,
that's another like security measure.
Yeah, it's just a security thing for the public. Me, if they were all mine that I'm keeping, I could care less because I know my collection's clean.
So you have a baby room and the adult room, they're separate?
Yep.
And how important do you think that is for anyone who's like wanting to do this seriously, especially if they have a collection of emeralds or chondros or Boelens? Like, do you feel like having a baby room is an important factor?
If you're selling them, yes. Just because you're giving the customer a peace of mind that you haven't touched your adult animals that been wherever.
Right.
So.
Well, obviously you work with emeralds, right?
Yep.
You know that some emeralds can't digest a rat. Regurgitation is quite the thing that is mainly in imports, right? People come and buy an emerald at a table, they go feed it, and they puke, right?
Yep.
What's that like with a Boelens? Is there any regurgitation issues? Have there ever been anything where if you feed it too much, it'll throw up on you?
Yeah, they're kind of disgusting animals. They'll just out of the blue, they'll just regurgitate. And, I've seen it happen. I was like, oh shit, what the hell, so I go get a paper towel to clean it up and the damn thing's re-eating it. So they're pretty gross. So,
wow.
They'll eat that whole regurgitation thing.
Yeah.
Mulch and all. Just, they don't care.
Yeah.
I don't know why they do it, but I've heard it from several different other Boelens keepers. Now the captive hatch ones have never done it. And the ones I got now, my adults, they only did it when they were little. So,
okay. Babies, where do you keep the temps at for babies? Like, where do you feel like the ideal temperature is for your baby Boelens that you're raising up?
Unfortunately for cage space, I have to use heat tape. And
they're in a rack system, right?
Well, I built my own cages.
Oh, cool.
So
neat.
They're 2x2. Well, the cage is actually 2 foot deep, 4 foot long, 18 inches tall, and I got a removable divider in it.
Oh, cool.
So they got a 2x2 floor space.
Okay.
And then I got heat tape on the back, just 6 inches of heat tape, and I run it at about 90 degrees, just because it takes, my room is 72.
Right.
It takes that extra.
Right. Yep. So in a perfect world, they have that 90 degrees, but it's probably like 77 on the cool side.
Yep.
Something not overbearing.
Well, cool side's probably like 70 degrees.
Because from what I've seen, definitely from a lot of people jumping into Boelens and not really understanding what they're getting into, you keep them too hot, they could get blisters, right?
I never had blisters. I had a guy just talking to me today about if I got them, and I've never had them. So, so I don't know if keeping them too hot is the problem or if they're keeping them too dry. So,
to be honest,
too wet. So
it's really hard to determine because the guy who, a couple guys I saw that went through this, they were imports.
Yeah.
So they got them in and they had blisters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that could be because they sat in their crap.
Yeah.
The whole way here. Yeah. Who knows? So.
Yeah.
But as far as like cleaning my baby Boelens, I do it every 3 days when they were in shoe boxes when they first hatched.
Right.
And they just trash that cage. I mean, spill their water and
go nuts.
They'd sit in the water for a day and a half before I cleaned it.
Yeah.
It's like I can't clean these things every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So I never had a blister at all. So
how quick are they digesting their food? Like
Well,
how quick are you seeing bowel movements after a feeding day on a baby?
Usually about 4 days.
Okay.
So 4 or 5 days. But the lump's usually gone after 2 days.
Any prolapses or anything like
Nope.
that? Awesome.
Nope. So
now colubrids are messy. I don't know if you ever dabbled with colubrids, right? I've been told by some people that Boelens is one giant colubrid.
Nope.
Is that true or false?
Yeah, if you overfeed them. So,
wow.
If you feed them correctly and grow them up slow like they should be, their poop is small. I'll feed a large rat and it's a small little turd that you can just reach in and pick up and grab.
So their body holds a lot of that.
Yep.
Is what you're saying.
Yep. They use every bit of that rat.
Like a boa.
So, yep.
Right.
Yeah, I did boas for years, and that's where you learn not to overfeed boas because it just kills them.
Yeah,
so.
And they have a slow digestive system.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's talk about some of the
Boelens don't. So
right, they burn quick. Right.
They're very active. So
right, but they retain a lot of that food that they're eating.
Yeah, and people overfeed them way too much.
Yeah.
I feed mine on average probably twice a month. But it could be just whenever I feel like feeding them. So they can eat once a month, once every three weeks. And I just feed them a large rat or a medium rat. I don't feed nothing huge.
Right.
Just
moderate.
They retain their body weight. Right. So even after they lay eggs, they gain that weight back within a month.
Yeah, so, I was going to ask you. So after you've seen a clutch laid from a Boelens, how does the female look? Is she pretty like worn out, or she look pretty good?
She looks great.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, I mean, I pulled the eggs from my female this year, and I fed her that same day. I mean, they could care less. And I don't clean the nest box, nothing. I just take the eggs out. She just goes about her business, and I don't worry about washing the snake off or anything. Boelens just don't. If they ain't sitting on the eggs, they ain't gonna care.
Yeah.
So.
Now let's talk about your nesting. Like what has worked for you as far as like the type of nest box, or like, because I also heard that's another big aspect, as far as them wanting to lay, they have to be comfortable in their surroundings. What do you have to say as far as what's worked with nesting?
Normally I just use a Rubbermaid tub with sphagnum moss in it.
Right.
Or with the cages that I built, I had leftover PVCs. So I just cut.
Made a box out of it.
Yeah, made a box, and actually just 2 sides and a lid.
How big's the box?
So 12 by 12 by 12. So
12 by 12, like inches or
yep,
feet?
12 inches.
Oh,
it's just a cube.
It's a cube.
12-inch cube.
And it fits in there.
Yep.
Wow.
They're not big snakes. They're only 8 feet long.
Right.
So.
And then also last night we talked a little bit about maternal incubation, and you almost prefer that route.
I'd rather do that route. But
tell us more. Why would prefer that?
It's just natural. So, what do I know that the snake doesn't know?
Right.
So they've been doing it for thousands of years. We only been doing it for 50 years?
Right.
So
at what point would you use an incubator?
Right now I use an incubator because I don't have the cage humidity right.
And that's important, you said.
That's
right?
real
You
important with the eggs.
Right.
So
because you had a female who maternal incubated and gave you 16 eggs and only 2 made it. Was that female?
No. I did 2 maternal incubations. The first time was with an infertile clutch.
Mm-hmm.
Just curious to see how long she'd stay on them and what temperature she'd keep them at.
Right.
And then the second clutch, she did maternal incubation. Same snake. This next year, she laid 26 eggs, and some of them eggs started going bad. So I yanked that clutch from her. She happened to get off them, and I saw that clutch was looking really rough.
And you think it had to do with humidity?
No, my good friend Mark Miles, he did maternal incubation, and
is he out of Kansas City?
Yeah, okay. Well, he's near Kansas City. Okay. So
shout out to Mark Miles. Yeah,
and he had a couple clutches that he did maternal incubation, but the eggs seemed to get too dry, and the eggs had died. But the ones he incubated that weren't in the clutch, those hatched just fine. So
is there a mission behind wanting to do more maternal incubation at some point?
Just because I want to know what all the temperatures should be.
So are you working on a new nest box or something then? Or
actually, the whole cage I'm working on trying to design it so it's humid enough for the nest box to stay humid.
Yeah.
So
Shout out to Ari Flagel, Quetzal. Do you know those guys?
I know Ari really well. I
Yeah.
never met Quetzal, but I know who he is. So
Yeah, Quetzal's around here, and I got to hang out with Ari on Wednesday. Shout out to Ari, love you, buddy. But yeah, one of the things that I've talked to Ari about, I don't even know where I was going to go with that. My mind just went blank.
Well, it's humid where they're at. I mean, it's wet.
Oh, I got it now.
So-
Okay, Serpents in the Clouds, the book that he wrote.
Yep.
Okay, a lot of interesting photos in there as far as where these Boelens are nesting at in tree trunks, deep down in tree trunks. Has to be humid as fuck in there.
Well, it has to be because outside that nest
Still humid.
is humid as fuck.
It's 90.
It's just
90
wet.
plus humidity.
It's
yeah.
always wet.
Right.
So that's what I'm going to try to duplicate is a wet cage.
Yeah.
When they're in the nest box, I'll just keep that cage super wet.
Right.
But I want to get a few more, get this pinpoint down. I want to know when she lays them eggs, they're all 100% fertile.
Right.
Because you get them infertile eggs in with the good eggs, it tends to make the good eggs, go bad. So
how are you maintaining humidity in the basement? Basement has good humidity as well as lower temps.
not
Is it
really.
dry in there.
I spray all my animals.
So you're a pro sprayer.
Yep.
You got people out there who don't believe in spraying.
Yeah, they're weird. So
You're weird. You're weird.
The snakes like to spray.
Right.
All my snakes like to be sprayed.
Yeah.
So
I mean, because you have people out there who say that, obviously there's fog and mist where they're from, and they say that they drink like that through the fog and mist.
well, I believe that. I believe their skin absorbs moisture.
Hydration, yeah,
Yep.
right.
I believe that a lot.
Yeah.
So, if you notice if you got a snake that's dry and its scales wrinkly,
Mhm.
it's not humid enough.
Right.
So, so if you keep them moist, it fixes that. That's
Yeah.
why I keep a lot of sphagnum moss. I do cypress mulch for flooring.
Yeah.
And I spray the hell out of my shit. So,
I mean, I'm in San Diego. I have to. If I don't, I have stuck sheds for days if I don't.
well, we got winter here, where I live, and it's cold and it's dry as fuck.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, you have to spray.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Biggest topic of the episode: cracking the code on Boelens. All right. Let's hear from you, man. I mean, everyone out there still think people aren't breeding them. I told you, I talked to 2 people at Bill Siegel's party, and I'm like, yeah, man, I can't wait to meet someone who's bred Boelens. And I'm like, did you meet Scott Flood yet? And they were like, what? But why is it that you feel like so many people think that this is an impossible feat still?
First off, everybody overthinks their shit.
Facts.
Quit thinking. Just keep them.
Right.
And the key is use multiple males.
What kind of ratio are we talking here?
I use 4 males per female.
Wow. But it's not as easy as just throwing them all together, right?
Nope.
Can we talk about the process behind, doing the 4-to-1 ratio and how you're successful at it?
First off, my animals are all aggressive. So as soon as I see an attitude change, it's usually happening right around December or January. And
Attitude change as in they're more aggressive or they're calm?
they calm down.
Wow. And that's a sign they're like,
Yep. I noticed that with my Apodora.
okay.
They're snake eaters.
Yeah, they eat each other for sure.
Yep, and they definitely try. So, I noticed once they calm down and quit trying to bite me, you can introduce them to the other snake.
Right.
And I was getting pretty good success. I was getting, with the Apodora, I was getting, major follicle development. They'd roll over, lay out on their back,
Right.
and then it just reabsorbs. So,
Right.
But back to the Boelens though. It's just their attitude changes, so I know when to put them together. So
You've had a lot of people had reabsorbed issues with Boelens. Do you not have multiple males with a pop one? Is that why? But why do you think you're
I don't know if I only had 1 male to work with. Mine were captive hatch
right?
back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
And I just never wanted to get another wild caught male.
Right.
I regret that decision. I should have tried, a little harder. But
How long have you had your pop ones for?
I got them as, I think they're 6-year-old adults, and when they finally died, they were over 30 years old. So
Wow. So no, you don't have them no longer.
no, they just passed away a couple years ago. So
I mean, we talk about. I mean, everyone talks about how majestic and like the unicorn snake is the Boelens, but I mean, I don't know, man. Poplin olives are freaking so amazing too.
Oh, they're cool, and I don't know what for reason. Mine were the meanest snakes I've ever dealt with.
Really?
So they would bite you every time you touched them.
Were they imports?
No, they were captive hatched.
Wow.
So Tom Widener back in the day hatched them.
Tom Wagner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tom
Yeah, that guy's a G.
Yeah, he's a Emerald King,
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. So there's temp cycling, there's food cycling. The male ratio that you're talking about. What's the most important? The male.
The male,
right?
I don't do any food cycle or light cycle.
You keep everything the same.
Yep,
all year long.
I feed them all year long until they refuse food, and the female will typically refuse food after she does her pre-lay shed. And other than that, they eat all the time. So whenever I offer them food.
Yeah.
So, and lighting, 12 on, 12 off, or whatever's close.
Right.
I manually do it all. So, it's just whenever I get down there and turn them off.
Interesting. So. I'm just curious, with your experience with Boelens now, like how big are you trying to take this, Scott? Like in 5 years, how many clutches of Boelens do you want if it all goes your way?
I'd like to do at least F3s, just so I
3 a year.
Well, no, 3 generations of.
Oh, 3 generations.
So I'd like to see if maybe by then it's 1-to-1 ratio.
Right.
So.
Oh, so you're trying to see if you could breed them to where you don't have to put 3-to-1 males.
Yep.
It's just 1-to-1 straight.
Yep.
Wow.
I'm fine tuning it now, so so it's just it sucks. You only can breed them once a year. So where I live, so
you're a true believer that the more generations, the easier it's going to get.
It worked with all the other snakes.
That's very true.
So,
I mean, because ball pythons at one point were a hard.
They
snake.
sucked.
Yeah, and nobody could figure them out. I think in the 90s, people were really.
Back in the 80s, I mean, you're lucky to keep them alive because they wouldn't eat.
Jeez.
So,
and now look, they're the easiest freaking snake to keep.
I mean, a freaking 4-year-old can breed them. Yeah. So, I don't get the ball python thing.
Other than the kids love it, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean they're good. They're a great kid snake. I just I wouldn't keep snakes if that's all I had to do was keep ball pythons.
So let's hear it from you, Scott. You've been under the radar for quite a while. Okay.
Just because I don't know.
You do your thing. Like
yeah.
I mean, this is
I don't like crowds, so
yeah. And also, you don't do things for the money either. Like this is a passion for you, right? And you've always kept it that way.
Yeah, I tried to. I got into boas, and I thought I could make a little bit of money with the boa morphs, and that's a sucky part of the business,
Yeah, I mean, you got to find what you love and what you're good at. It seems like you've done that, but like, are you going to be more active now? I mean, you're on Trap Talk, the coolest reptile network in the world. So, are we going to see more, Scott? What's going on?
I'll be out there as long as I'm breeding Boelens. So, and just because I want people to know you can breed Boelens, you need to breed, 4 males to 1 female seems to work really well.
Right.
I
had to ask you, incubation temperatures. What do you like to keep the temperature in your incubator at for your Boelens?
88.
88?
Yeah, right in there. If it goes down to 87, no big deal.
And you over vermiculite, correct?
Yeah, I use
Do you put them directly in the vermiculite? Do you have a little light diffuser that you do you have like a little egg crate that you put
I nestle them into, not quite half, and that seems to work.
Have they had any eggs go bad on you a lot in the incubator, or is it pretty straightforward?
I've had 1 egg in last year go bad.
Okay.
So,
what day are you normally seeing the pips?
About 72 to 77. So I usually pip them when I see the first one pip.
Right.
So,
and there's also like one of the things with chondros, you deal with a lot of like tangulations with the umbilical cords and stuff like that. You deal with anything crazy like that with the Boelens yet? Anything like
nothing like
out of
that.
The eggs?
I've had one crawl out of the egg and die right away.
God,
so
that sounds like a chondro.
That kind of sucked, but it is what it is. So,
listen, before I let you go, man, it was great having you at Bill Siegel's party.
It's awesome being there.
You rumbled through the chondro room. So let's hear what you have to say about the green tree python community. How do you think about working with chondros someday?
I've worked with chondros, but they're great snakes. I like emeralds better, so that's why I keep emeralds. So
Emeralds break. For me, I got my heart broken more by emeralds, but
oh, I always get my heart broken.
yeah.
You know,
But you don't take it personal, huh?
Nope. You know, I swore I'd never get them again.
Right.
You know, and here I got them again. So
for the love of the animal, man.
You know, they're a neat snake. Chondros are great. Bill has an awesome room.
Yeah.
Awesome collection.
Yeah, you like his designers?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
So, you know, I mean, you know, all you can do is add more black to them. So,
right.
You know, if he gets smart, he'll buy Boelens. So
there you go.
You know.
Hope you're listening to that, Bill.
But forget about trying to make all these green snakes black. Just buy a black snake.
Make your life easier.
Yep.
Man, this has been a great time, and I know this won't be the only time I sit down and talk to you, but it was an honor to have you in front of me. Finally, get to talk to you, Cheyanne. Cheyanne already dropped all the social media plugs, so she's in charge as far as that goes.
Yep, I hate computers.
Yeah, don't worry, people won't bother you. They'll go bother Cheyanne. So
you know, and she texts me and calls me and asks me questions, you know, that she don't know. So
yeah,
but most of the time she can take care of it. So
what do you have to say to anyone out there who is maybe too scared to work with Boelens because they think it's too hard of a snake to work with?
Don't worry about it. If you had ball pythons, you can keep Boelens. So
as simple as that.
They're simple.
All right.
So
guys, Scott Flood Reptiles, thank you so much, Scott. Enjoy the rest of your show. Hope you have a great time, and we'll catch him again. But let's give it up for Scott Flood, guys.
Thanks.
All right, we're all good. Thank you, man.